Hi, PIXELvienna. This is our talk about a spotlight on visual storytelling. I'm Simon Blüthenkranz.
And I am Manuel Reyes.
So, a little bit about me. My name is Simon Blüthenkranz, like I already said, and I started with the whole animation um, thing since I was 6 years old. I just got a webcam from my dad, and I just experimented with a lot of new techniques. Like I thought I invented rotoscoping when I did it with Microsoft Paint and Movie Maker and PowerPoint. Um, and yeah, I cut up those news articles and scanned them in and made my own comp in PowerPoint. And I didn't know that this could be something I could pursue or make money with. So I wanted to be a stage technician or gaffer or DP on a movie set. So I volunteered to help out in local theaters and also at the local film school, and that's where I learned all the basics in lighting, like, oh, you have to move the light between shots. You can move lights between shots in order to make each shot like unique and better. Uh, that was a thing that was really new to me because I just watched movies. I didn't work on movies yet, and there were not at this point. I didn't have any internet, and I also didn't read books. So I learned that by doing it. And then one director asked me to do a ghost effect, and we wanted to do it practically, but I couldn't do it. So at this point, I already had internet. I was a little bit older than 6 years old, and I already had internet. And I googled it, and then this software called Blender popped up, and I checked it out. It was really awesome. I could do the same things I could do on a movie set, but I could make the lights like much bigger than you could do in real life, and you can just say, okay, I assign this light just to this object, and basically break reality and make everything as perfect as you can, which you don't have time on a film set. You the only thing that you maybe can do is put a diffusion filter on a light for the close-up, so it's a bit softer, but otherwise the set is moving so quickly that you can't do like minor tweaks that you could do in animation. And then at that point, I just fell in love with animation. And I went to HTL Spengergasse to learn more about it and learn more the technical things on how to do it, but also more the creative things on how to do it. And was really fun. My experience at Spengergasse. I met a lot of friends, and also I could do on the side. I made some fun short films with already people who worked in the industry, and also made friends there. And by the end of HTL Spengergasse, I already got a job at Ax Anima, and had my first job experience there. And now I'm glad to work at Jellyfish Pictures, and I'm currently working on a DreamWorks animated movie, which is also nice. So yeah, I will just hand it over to Manuel.
Hi. I work with Simon at Jellyfish Pictures, and I am a VFX supervisor now. The last 5-6 years, I've been supervising projects here in London, but I'm originally from the Canary Islands in Spain. Some of the projects that I've supervised are Messi Goes to Okido for CBBS, and also Bits and Bob, both for BBC and the CBBS channel, and also the holiday special for How to Train Your Dragon with DreamWorks, which, by the way, you can see some pictures on the right-hand side of the recording of the soundtrack, and also at the Annie Awards last January, before the pandemic madness started. I have a background in engineering, so I studied telecommunications engineering, lots of electronics and some programming, a bit of video engineering, sound engineering, and now I work doing cartoons. And over to you, Simon.
Okay. um, so one of the reason I chose lighting as my profession is you probably heard about the 12 principles of animation. Well, in lighting, there are just 4. So I'm just going over the 4 principles of lighting and how to tell a story with light. So the first principle is leading the eye. And you really need to lead the viewer's eye, because sometimes a shot is just 6 frames long, or even if the shot is pretty long, you really don't want the viewer to get sick, and you want to move the story along. So you really need to control where the viewer is looking at. And then we have sculpting and shaping, and I like to think about it like this. You are the last person as a lighting artist to touch the 3D part and basically convert it into 2D with rendering. So you want to get the most detail and the most shaping out of your 3D object as much as possible, and just make them 3-dimensional and just beautiful. And then we have creating a feeling and mood, because that's why we are here at the end, to create a story and make the viewers feel something. And there are multiple clips online where you see sequences recut with different music, and that this changes the mood. Well, it's the same thing with lighting. You can light a scene in very different ways, and you get a different feeling of it. Like you can make a light much sharper, and then you have a different feeling than if it's really soft. You can make a light in a different color. Like you can make a warm light, a cool light, which has a different feeling. But we will get to this when we talk about mood. And then creating depth, which is, I think, also part of the sculpting and shaping, because you also want to let the viewers dive into the movie, because you want to open up the screen into another world that the viewers can live in for the period of the movie. So the more depth you create, the more the viewers can lean into the movie and be actually part of the movie. And I think that's also a big part of creating your lighting. A technique that is the easiest way to lead the eye is contrast. And the way you can create contrast is with HSL, Hue, Saturation and Luminance. Contrast can be warm and cold. It can be 2 complementary colors. Saturation could be a really saturated object in front of really desaturated object, or exactly the opposite. And luminance could be just the most contrasted image in luminance wise, like a black object over a white background, or a white object over a black background. And then of course you can lead the viewer's eye by just blurring the background and basically setting the focus. But I wouldn't say that this is something that you should rely on, because the other 3 options are way more effective in leading the viewer's eye. I think you can do it additionally, but I think you shouldn't do it as the only way. And I also put abstraction in there because, of course, there are movies like Spider-Verse that doesn't necessarily have blur or smooth objects. So instead of that, you can use abstraction, just simple shapes in the background to lead the viewer in this way. So let's look at pretty pictures. So this is a picture of Spider-Verse. You really see that they really had to try to lead the viewer's eye really quick, especially in the first minutes of the movie. A shot is really fast paced, so you really have like maybe 12 seconds in a shot. So the lighting artist is tasked with creating the most contrast and using everything in his toolkit to lead the viewer's eye. So in this case, you have a dark over bright contrast with the spider being really, really dark and the background being really, really bright. In the next image, you kind of have the same thing. In this example, you really, really look at the bright part on the left image, on the two guys who are just hanging hanging from the lamp, and then you still have light on this rope that Spider-Man is holding, and this leads your eye to Spider-Man, who is also separated from the background with his saturation and also luminance with his big rim light. And on the right image, the brightest part of the image is behind Spider-Man, behind his face. So his dark values really help him pop him off the image. So your eye is really drawn to this point because this is the highest contrast. This is pretty obvious. You basically have a spotlight on Spider-Man. You don't really notice it in the movie, but here it's pretty obvious, and that makes Spider-Man also the most contrasted point in the image. And here, this is a really good example of first of all luminance, because of course the background is already is brighter, and the foreground is a little bit darker. But also, this is a good example of warmth and cold separation, because the background is has a really warm tone, and the foreground has a really cold tone. So that also helps him separate. So this way, your eye doesn't get as distracted by the whole complicated set here, but you're really drawn to him, the character, because he's the most contrasted point in the image. This is also an example of hue, and in a contrast, you have in this case, complementary colors. You have the red in the front and then the blue in the back, and that separates them from each other. And you look, of course, at them both also because of the luminance value, because they are pretty bright here. This is I think from the trailer from Spider-Verse, and this is really well made, because they actually switch up the way how they separate the character from the background. So you actually always have the focus on the character. So in this case, we have this really, really bright rim light on him. So you really can't, he's the brightest point in the image. You really can't do anything except look at him, because he's the most contrasted point in the image. He's the brightest. But as the shot progresses, also you see all this detailed background, but you still look at Spider-Man because he's the most contrasted. So he has this really harsh rim light, but he also has these dark tones in there. Then he jumps and jumps. He's still the brightest object. But then at the end of this shot, you actually have Spider-Man, the darkest part of the image, and the background is actually much brighter, which helps him pop off. And Spider-Man is kind of a silhouette. In this case, it's also really interesting what they have done with this shot in Frozen. When you look at this image, he is way more saturated and way brighter than anyone here in this image, which is totally fake, of course, because this wouldn't happen really. Like, he is really desaturated and he has all his saturation and is really bright. But that way you look at him, and that's what the creators of the movie and the artists of the movie wanted you to. You don't look at him, you don't look at the background characters, you look at this character, because he's the brightest, he's the most contrasted, and he's the most saturated point of the image. This is an example from Being Good that I actually lit. And in this case, I used the same techniques as we just saw. I wanted you to look at the gum and the character moment that she just has with her expression. So what I did, I made the brightest part in the image the gum and the expression of the characters. So you look at the gum. In this case, you have the same thing. I put a spotlight on the character, so he is also the brightest point in the image. And also, what also helps in this shot is that the color difference in the background, the background is much more cool and has green and blue tones and cyan tones. And then you have the purple tones in the foreground, which let them pop off the background. In this shot, I used gobos, and we used gobos throughout the whole movie to lead the eye. And gobos are basically objects that block the light. And so if you just put some objects that block light, it's called a gobo. It can also be called a cookie. There are many names for it, but let's just stick with gobo for now. And that way you really, with this gobo here and the gobos behind him, you really look at the camera, at the character. Here I also used gobos to just shape the environment a bit. I didn't really use it to lead the viewer's eye. At the beginning of the shot, you see a bus, and I led the viewer's eye to the bus. So in this case, it's more or less just shaping. But you can also use gobos in a more storytelling way. In this case, in Zootopia, they used gobos to tell a story, and they did it really well. In this part of the story, if you've never seen Zootopia, Judy had this press conference that predators are dangerous. So in this shot, the lighting artist separated the predator from the prey with a gobo. You really have a clear line between them, and basically Judy split them apart, and that's part of this shot. What you can also see in this shot is that not only the gobo splits this shot apart, but also hue differences. You can also see Judy Hopps very desaturated and more cold. And the other part of the image is warm. This is also there to convey mood. Let's go to sculpting and shaping. I know the talk is really short, so I can't really go into shaping and sculpting as I would like to. This is Rembrandt, and probably the most of you know what I'm going for. It's Rembrandt Lighting. And what is Rembrandt Lighting? It's this special precision of the key light that just brings out the most shape in a character. And the way you can notice Rembrandt Lighting is this Rembrandt triangle here underneath the eye. And you can watch probably every movie in the book and you will see Rembrandt Lighting, live action, animation. Here are just a few examples about the Rembrandt Lighting. You have here the triangle, you have here the triangle, you have here the triangle, and you have here the triangle. Of course, by stylist characters, it doesn't have to be a triangle because stylist characters have really exaggerated shapes, but it should look more or less like this. So let's talk about mood. When it comes to mood, a lighter has a big toolkit at his disposal. You can do so many things with your lights to create mood. If it's the color of the light, the sharpness of the light, and also what I will talk about now, contrast ratios. What you see here is a contrast ratio chart, and you see from left to right a high key image, so an image where the key light and the fill light has the same value, to a low key image where you have a lot of contrast. And this is what we call contrast ratios. And I have an example later where you can really see the difference contrast ratio can have in a scene. So let's look at some pretty images again from Zootopia. I'm not sure how many of you have seen Zootopia, but in this scene, Nick tells the story about his childhood and how he was treated as a predator. And he tells the story, and you really need to see what's going on in the lighting here. So now it's really cold. You have really harsh shadows. Everything is backlit. So it's a really cold mood and cold environment. And then he gets his story off his chest. He tells his story, and what you see with the scene, it gets much warmer. It gets brighter. You have more key light in their faces, and it just looks warm again. It gets way more warm in the scene. It gets warmer and warmer because he opens up, and of course he feels better when opening up to her, and you really see this happening in the lighting. After that, you have the press conference scene that I'm already mentioned before, and what they did here is also really smart. The reporters really burn her with questions, and she gets really overwhelmed. And what they did in lighting, they really overexposed the flashes, and they will really quick flashes of overexposed light hitting her, like the questions that are hitting her. And what she tells them is that predators are bad, and you should be afraid of them, and that they haven't changed. And what happens then is something I will also tell you. So this happens before the press conference. So you have really high key, warm lighting. All the light is soft. You really have really good shaping. Looks just nice. And then after the press conference, the mood completely changes, of course, and the story completely changes. And then the same camera view, the same camera angle, looks completely different. Of course, it's not only the camera view also changed a bit, because it's not only lighting that creates a mood, but also layout with the camera. So they used a way longer lens for it, but it's kind of the same camera angle. And you see the contrast ratio is just way higher than here. So this is what I would say in an animated movie, in an animated kids movie, it's high contrast. It's really low key, and the light is also way sharper, way colder, and just has a really different mood to it. And this really helps you tell the story. Here's another example: the same camera angle here, really bright, really warm, and then here you get these cool tones. You have way more contrast, and it's just way cooler here. This is my favorite scene in Zootopia. In this scene, Judy apologizes to Nick Wilde, and when the writers just did an amazing job here in this sequence. She apologizes when under the bridge, and she apologizes when she's in the darkness. So she's very cold. Everything is dark. She apologizes to Nick Wilde, and then you get the comic relief here, and Nick Wilde just takes her in his arms, and she goes from darkness into his arms, into the lightness. And I really, this is my favorite shot, probably storytelling-wise, in a movie that I have ever seen. And then just to wrap things up, we will just explore a whole short film in a heartbeat by Beth David and Esteban Bravo, because they really also did a great job at visual storytelling and telling this film through lighting. So this is the first shot in a heartbeat, and they used gobos again here to lead the viewer's eye to the main character. The main character afterwards jumps into that bush, and then we see him still popping out with this really strong rim light, and he pops off the background, of course. Then we see this shot. In this shot, you also have this color contrast, this bright background. You really look at this point, because this is the most contrasted point. Then we have this shot, and of course you have the luminance difference, the bright background, and also he's more contrasted and the background is more lifted. But you also have the difference about the hue. You have the background more cyan and blue and cold, and he has really warm color tones, which really help him pop off the image. And we have this image, and he plays with his apple a little bit, so they highlighted the apple a little bit with a glint and a little bit of a rim light. And I know I already showed you this image, but I also wanted to point out that in lighting, you don't always have to lead the eye to an object or a character, but you can also lead the eye to a special moment. And that's what they did here. In the next frame, he bumps on the tree. And what they did is they highlighted this moment with much more contrast. So you really feel that moment and you really see that moment. The same thing that is happening here. Of course, the other guy is also visible, but he's not as saturated as the character that we should focus on, and also not as bright. Of course, he's also a main character, so he's also shaped very well, but you can really see the rim light that they placed here on the heart to really pop the heart out and really shape the heart too. This is also a really smart scene. I'm not sure if everything is intentional or if it's just a lucky mistake that they did, but in this case I would say you would look at the guy here, but then he moves into shadow. So you look at the heart shape here, and then the heart comes back into the shadow, but for some reason, lighting magic, he's still bright. He's not really in the shadow. The shadow doesn't affect him really. And what the heart shape does, he drags him. The heart shape drags him into the light, but he pushes back into the shadow. And this also tells the story really well in a visual way. He drags him into the light, but he pushes back into the shadow. And then, of course, you have this funny scene where the heart shape drags him around the scene, and then you get this shot where you have this heart shape natural vignette from a few objects, and the spotlight with a few gobos pointed directly at those two, which is really well made. Of course, you look at those two, and also the heart shape points at those two, so it's a really, really nice image. And also, when you see, you have really nice shaping on the trash can on the left, because that's where the other main character jumps into. And then just to point out, this is on the left, you see a side character. You notice him, but you don't. Your eye isn't drawn to him. Your eye is still drawn to the main character because he doesn't have any contrast. He's pretty dark, and he just moves by. You know that he's not important to the scene just by the lighting. This is also a really nice image, I think. Of course, you have this contrast from the darker shapes to the brighter shapes in the background. So you really look at this moment in the middle of the frame, and also you have this effect of the bokeh, of the camera defocus that you would get when you cut out a heart shape with a piece of paper and put it in front of the camera. So the bokeh has the shape of the heart, and they replicated that in CG, which is also a really, really nice idea, I think. Also, the shaping on the heart shape is really well done in this scene. And if we stay in the topic of shaping a little bit, you can see how they shaped the head, the hair of the main character here. They used a cold area light, probably, to shape the highlights of the hair, but then they rimmed the character with a warm light. That way you have the three-dimensional feeling in the hair. And then the heart drags him into the school, and they did a really nice thing here. Of course, everything is really, really bright, and the light bounces off the ground and onto him. And that's when you get underlighting. And underlighting is a really nice thing you can do to create a sense of something is not right. Normally the sunlight comes from above, and when the light comes from the exact opposite, it just looks weird, because we are not used to see the light come from below. That's why in horror movies you have all those scenes that are really scary, lit from below, and also in the camp light scenes, the flashlight aimed from below, because it's just weird to see the light coming from below, because we are used to see the light come from above. So that's what they did. They used underlighting to make the scene just more uncomfortable, and also used the light, the overexposed light, to make it more uncomfortable. Like here you have literally a spotlight hitting them. Everyone else is pretty dark, has also underlighting. Everyone is looking at them in this underlit, so it's just more fearful for the characters. And then they run out. And what you can also see is the shaping on the door. Normally, if we would shoot it like live action, the whole door will just be bright, but they added a little ramp to make it a little bit more nicer, the frame. So they run out, and this is also a really, really good example of a good mood. So you really have a cold mood. You everything is, because of the fog, is really lifted. You don't have much contrast. The character is, of course, sad. It's very cold. Also an example of highlighting a moment, because they put a spotlight at this spot in the frame. So if he moves his hand here, this moment of putting those two parts of the heart together is highlighted. Then, of course, the heart is back, and the mood is really bright again and really beautiful again, and has warm colors. And if we compare it to the previous image, you really see the difference. Like here, you have really cold colors, not much contrast. It's very lifted. The shadows, the key is really harsh too. And then you have this, where you have all the warm colors popping back in. The fog pushes a little bit back. You have much more contrast here, way more direct light, and it just looks beautiful. And just to end my part of the talk, I just want to highlight every shot, sequence, or image has a purpose. Even if you do a turntable as a test, it has a purpose, and you need to light it with the purpose in mind. And of course, those 4 principles that I just mentioned are just principles. And if you want the viewers to be confused, and if you want them to don't know where to look at, then of course you can do it. You can break the rules. As you just need to know why you're doing it, and you can do anything. There are no rules. They're just purposes. And I just think that you need a reason why you do it. And you also need a reason for every light that you place in the scene. Because I see so many people doing like just 3-point lights, and they just put 3 lights in the scene since the beginning. But what you should actually do is put 1 light in there, get the position right, and then see if you need another light. And have a purpose for this light. And have a reason why you put this light in this spot, have this brightness, have this color, and have this softness to the light. And then your image will turn out great. And also one extra technical thing before I hand over the mic to Manuel is that it could happen that you have too many lights in your scene, and you don't know what they are actually doing, like what purpose each light has to your shot and has to the lighting of the scene. And when you look at the image, you will notice that the shot is overly lit. And the only way to avoid that is really thinking about each light and thinking about why I need an extra light to achieve this, because every light needs to have a purpose. Every light needs to have a reason to be there. So what will happen if you have too many lights in your scene is that they will cancel each other out, and so you will have the opposite effect that you actually wanted when you started placing those lights. So always think, the simpler the lighting, the better. The less lights you actually have in the scene, the better. So with this said, I will hand the mic over to Manuel.
All right, thank you, Simon. Well, we're working with CG lighting, which is what Simon has been talking about. And there's always issues with the technology and the art, and how one can be limiting to the other. And we can see a few issues, like, for example, how important is the technical side of lighting in CGI. Normally, especially junior artists, they focus on software and learning the buttons. Do I need to learn all the buttons? We'll talk about that. We also see how to overcome those technical limitations, or at least some ways that we can use to overcome all of those. And you see how everything is a beautiful lie. And then we see a few more pictures that consolidate the whole thing. So how important is the technical side? We can use multiple programs to do lighting in CG. Each of them works a bit differently. They have different methods. They have different tricks, different ideas. Some of them are procedural. Some of them are a bit more manual. They require different techniques. But in the end, we have to learn how to use a tool, and we'll learn to use it in the job. So, do you need to learn all the buttons in a program to do lighting? No. At least not before you learn how lighting works. So you need to understand lighting before you learn all the technical difficulties of it. For example, when we find lighting artist job offers, or when we personally hire lighting artists, I don't focus on can you use this software or can you use the other program. At least that's not the deciding factor. For me, the work has to be good. The artists need to have good eye, and the tools can be learned during the job, or at least part of it. No. In the end, these programs share almost the same functionalities. You just have to learn how to do it. But that's something that you can learn very quickly in a week or two, perhaps. However, learning how lighting works takes a longer time. So that's always the key. How do we overcome all the technical limitations that we can have in CG, in CG lighting? It's starting with something that doesn't have that much of a limitation. So the limitation in this case is the artist's ability to express mood and design a lighting that works for a scene as a sequence as well. So whenever we work in feature film or TV series, an artist will start by doing what we call color keys. Normally they grab a scene of the movie or a scene of the series and they paint on top. They paint not thinking what can be done in CG and what cannot be done in CG. So they just try to make a nice image, and starting from there, the artist will find a way of doing it. Similar thing happens with storyboarding, where directors normally do not tell the storyboard artists what to do, but they give them freedom. And after that, you will see how you can overcome that limitation. Here's another example. This is on the left. You can see what could be the layout or blocking of a shot. So that image is passed to the production designer or some other artist that will do the color keys. And then on the right hand side, you can see how they just painted on top of the low poly CG. They didn't think of where you can use a light for one character or light for the other, or do I have to block light? They didn't think of any of that. So basically, they just concentrate on getting the best lighting possible for the artists or for the project, and then we will figure out in lighting how to do that. Everything is a beautiful lie because the artist will lie to you in order to make images nice. So here we're analyzing part of a sequence of the beginning of a short film. The short film is La Noria by Carlos Baena. This translates to the Ferris wheel. And here they've used a few cheats just to lead us in at looking at whatever they decided us we should look at. So the kid has lost something here, part of a mechanical piece, and the piece rolled under the bed. And you can see how the wooden planks at the floor, they're quite bright, almost as bright as his feet. But the image also has a stylization which makes the frame go, all the left part of the frame is brighter and then goes to the right hand side a bit darker. That is quite common actually in movies. You will see that in at least animated movies and all the Roger Deakins movies. You probably see that. The next frame, you see the brightness of the kid stays the same, and even when the camera goes to the reverse angle, you see the floor is quite bright, and his hand is the brightest part of the image. Then the angle changes. We still don't see the piece, but you can see the wooden planks at the front are the brightest part of the image, so the floor is still bright. And you can see it one more time. However, there's another shot that follows the previous one that we just saw, and this frame falls and breaks on the floor, and suddenly the wooden floor where the kid was standing that was really bright a second ago, now it's really dark, and you just see his feet and the frame. So that's another trick. And the following shot, you can see how, although we have a very warm light on the right hand side, the warm light on his face comes from the left of the screen, and the light on his face, that is a rim light and comes from where the lamp is actually quite cold. So things do not make sense. They are not accurate physically, but they work, and that's what's important. Here we have a scene of Anomalisa, where this guy is getting dressed in a hotel, and you can see how all the lights are quite warm. However, you have a very strong rim light on the top right of his shoulder and his head that doesn't exist in the scene at all. You don't see any sources for that light. So here you still have that very strong light at the back of his head. It's not represented by anything in this scene. And he keeps walking. He goes under like a very blue light there, and again you will not see that. Now the warm lights disappeared. He still has a lot of light on his shoulder, on his head, and in the shirt you can see how there's a lot of light. And suddenly when we see the image from outside, his shirt is very dark. The light in this shot is coming from underneath. You can see how his underlid here, the shadows are going up on his face, and you would assume there is some light coming from the ground floor here, from the in the corridor. You can see the wrinkles on his shirt, how the light comes from underneath. But when the camera turns around, there are no lights underneath, and everything is just as you would expect in a hotel corridor. But the lighting worked just to create the mood in that sequence. And in the end, we'll have to use all the tools that we have at our disposal just to make nice pictures. So these are a few frames from the short film Bao, and in this one, the artist wants you to focus on the two characters. However, if we would have physical lights, she would be blocking all the light on the small Bao. You can see here how, however, that the Bao still receives a lot of light, and she's not blocking it. So she has her own light, the Bao has its own light, and both are working. So that's a nice trick that we can use in CG. You can use a light only for some objects and not for all of them. You can see how it brightens when it's happy, and when she moves away, the Bao gets more light. So I understand that there was a light that was affecting both, and one that's only affecting the bow. And when she comes back, the light that was affecting him also affects the spoon here with the food. So now he's a bit darker. But after all, it just works. And that's it for us. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for listening. And I think we will be answering questions now.
Let's go for it.